My dad kicked me out on Christmas Eve with nothing but a trash bag of clothes. After 5 years of paying every bill in our house while he sat around playing video games, he called me a burden and changed the locks. They had no idea that every utility, every service, and every account was in my name. They threw me away like garbage, not realizing I controlled their entire life. So I decided to cut off everything. Heat during the coldest winter in Ohio history, electricity during an ice storm, water when the pipes were ready to burst. I watched from my new apartment as their comfortable life crumbled. They thought they were discarding a burden. Instead, they were cutting their only lifeline. Now I would make them pay for treating me like an ATM instead of a daughter. I never thought I'd be spending Christmas Eve in my car, staring at the trash bags containing what was left of my life. 5 hours earlier, I had been rushing home from work with gifts and groceries, my arms laden with packages as I struggled through the door of our small Ohio home. "You're late," my father said without looking up from his video game. "We need more eggnog for tomorrow." "I just worked a 12-hour shift," I replied, setting down the groceries. "I bought eggnog yesterday." My mother appeared from the bedroom, scrolling through her phone. "We drank it, and the family's coming tomorrow. We'll need more food." "What family?" I stopped unpacking the bags. "We didn't discuss having people over." "Your aunts and uncles, and your father's cousins," my mother said dismissively. "I told them you'd make your famous pot roast." I closed my eyes briefly, trying to maintain composure. "I can't make pot roast overnight. I've been working overtime all month to cover the mortgage. I'm exhausted." "Always complaining," my father muttered. "We put a roof over your head, don't we?" The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. For 5 years, ever since Dad lost his job at the plant and decided he was too good for retail work, I'd been paying the mortgage, and the utilities, and the car payments, and the groceries. My entire paycheck from the insurance company went to keeping this household afloat. My brother Tyler, barely 17, caught my eye from the kitchen doorway. He understood. He'd seen the bills I paid late at night when our parents were asleep. "I bought everyone Christmas gifts," I said, gesturing to the packages by the door. "But I can't conjure a feast for 12 people overnight." My father paused his game, a dangerous sign. "So we're not good enough for your effort? After all we've done for you?" "What exactly have you done?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face twisted with rage. "We raised you, fed you, clothed you, and this is how you repay us? By being ungrateful?" "I pay all the bills," I said quietly. "Every single one." "Because you live here," my mother shrieked. "You're supposed to contribute." "I don't contribute, Mom. I fund this entire household." My father stood up then, controller clattering to the floor. "You think you're so special because you have a job? You've always been a burden. Always. Even now, you're just a burden with a paycheck." What happened next played out like a nightmare, in slow motion. My father ordered me out. When I didn't move fast enough, he began throwing my things into garbage bags. My mother changed the locks while I was gathering essentials from my bedroom. Tyler tried to intervene and got shoved into his room. As I stood on the porch, snow falling on my shoulders, my father tossed the last trash bag at my feet. "You were always the worst investment we ever made," he said before slamming the door. I sat in my car in the Walmart parking lot, numb with cold and shock, when my phone buzzed. A payment reminder for the electric bill, then another for the internet, and the water, and the mortgage. That's when clarity hit me like a lightning bolt. They had no idea, absolutely no idea that I controlled everything. Every account was in my name. Every autopay came from my accounts. Every service that made their lives comfortable flowed through me. They hadn't just thrown out their daughter. They'd ejected their entire financial infrastructure. I called my colleague Marissa, who immediately offered her couch. As I drove to her apartment, a strange calm settled over me. My parents had made their choice. Now it was time for them to live with the consequences. Marissa's spare bedroom became command central for what I now thought of as Operation Shutdown. On Christmas morning, while my parents were presumably hosting their holiday gathering, I methodically changed every password to every account I managed. "You're sure about this?" Marissa asked, bringing me coffee as I worked. They made their choice, I said, clicking through security questions. Time for them to live with it. My first move was small but symbolic. I canceled all streaming services and the internet. Let them try to explain to the relatives why Netflix stopped working in the middle of their Christmas movie. My phone exploded with texts from unknown numbers. Relatives' phones, I realized. My parents were too proud to contact me directly. I blocked them all except for my brother's secret second phone number. Tyler called that night. They're telling everyone there's some kind of holiday service outage, he whispered. Dad tried to call the internet company but couldn't get through because of high call volume. Is there anything you need? I asked him. Just to know you're okay. I'm staying with Marissa until I figure things out. I'm not coming back, Tyler, not ever. I know, he said, and I don't blame you. 3 days after Christmas, I returned to work with renewed focus. My boss noticed the change immediately. Something's different about you, she commented. You seem unburdened. The word made me smile. I've made some changes in my personal life. By New Year's Eve, I'd found a more permanent solution. My colleague Nora needed a roommate for her 2-bedroom apartment. I moved in the next day, using my first full paycheck that wasn't dedicated to my parents' expenses to buy actual furniture. For myself. Meanwhile, I timed my next move perfectly. The payment for electricity was due on January 3rd, just as the Midwest was plunging into a historic cold snap. I simply didn't make it. Tyler called me on January 5th. The power's out, he said, his voice shaking slightly. Dad called the electric company, but they said the account is past due. He tried to set up a new account, but they need a deposit because of his credit score. Are you warm enough? I asked. Mom found some old camping gear in the basement. I'm okay. 3 more months until you're 18, I reminded him. Then you can come stay with me. That night, my phone blew up with notifications. Someone was attempting to access my bank accounts. I recognized the pattern. My father was trying combinations of my birthday, our address, even our old dog's name. I immediately reported the unauthorized access attempts to the bank and to the police, creating an official record. The next day, I canceled the family cell phone plan. Now communication would be even harder for them, exactly as I wanted it. By mid-January, I had opened new accounts at different banks, secured all my personal documents, and established a complete separation from my former life. I kept only one connection, regular check-ins with Tyler through his school email account. My parents had thrown me away. Now I was erasing them from my life, bill by bill, service by service. And they were finally learning what life really cost. I was going over insurance claims at my desk when security called. There's a situation in the lobby, the guard said uncomfortably. A couple claiming to be your parents. They're quite agitated. My heart hammered, but my voice remained steady. I'll be right down. I texted my boss quickly. She knew some of my situation, then took the elevator to the lobby. The doors opened to chaos. My father was red-faced, shouting at the security guard. My mother was crying theatrically. Both looked disheveled, unwashed hair, rumpled clothes. The cold had not been kind to them. There she is, my father bellowed when he saw me. The ungrateful brat who left her family to freeze. I approached calmly, stopping well out of reach. You kicked me out on Christmas Eve. You changed the locks. You abandoned your family, my mother wailed. We're living like animals because of you. Several of my colleagues had gathered at a safe distance. My boss appeared at my side. These people are causing a disturbance, she said firmly. Should I call the police? Yes, I replied, never taking my eyes off my parents. And please have security save the video footage. My father lunged forward suddenly. You think you're so smart? I'll show you what happens to little girls who think they can ruin their fathers. Security intercepted him before he could reach me. As they restrained him, his face twisted with rage. I'll find where you live. I'll take back what's mine. When the police arrived, I gave a statement, requested a restraining order application, and provided contact information for the officers to reach me. My parents were escorted from the building with trespass warnings. My boss touched my shoulder, gently afterward. Take the rest of the day, she said. And Sarah, That promotion we discussed? It's yours if you want it. That night, I visited the county courthouse and filed for an emergency restraining order. The judge granted it based on the workplace security footage and my father's threats. Then I made one more phone call to cancel the water service payment. 2 days later, I signed a lease on my own one-bedroom apartment near work. As I unlocked the door to my new home, my name on the lease, my security deposit, my space, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Tyler reported that our parents were now using melted snow to flush toilets. The neighbors had begun to ask questions. Extended family members were hearing conflicting stories. "Mom took your Honda last night," Tyler texted one evening in early February. She said since she paid for some of it years ago, it's partly hers. I reported the car stolen immediately. The police found my mother using it at a grocery store parking lot the next day. The image of her being handcuffed beside my Honda, which I had completely paid off 2 years prior, gave me a satisfaction I didn't try to hide. Later that week, my father violated the restraining order, showing up drunk at my apartment building. A neighbor recognized him from the description I'd circulated to building security and called the police. His subsequent arrest and overnight jail stay added another layer of consequences to their crumbling facade. Through it all, I maintained my composure. I went to work, excelled at my new position, built relationships with colleagues who became true friends, and created the independent life I should have established years ago. My parents had controlled me through obligation and guilt. Now they were learning how it felt to have no control at all. By March, my parents' lives had descended into a chaos of their own making. Without utilities, their house had deteriorated. Rapidly, pipes had frozen and burst. Mold had begun growing on the walls. Neighbors had called code enforcement multiple times. Meanwhile, my life was flourishing. My promotion came with a substantial raise. I'd furnished my apartment with items I actually chose. I'd started taking evening classes to finish my degree. For the first time, my money went toward my future instead of their past. Tyler kept me updated through our secure channels of communication. Our parents had begun selling family heirlooms, jewelry, antiques, even my grandmother's silver, to pay for basic necessities. They'd borrowed money from reluctant relatives by spinning tales of medical emergencies and temporary hardships. "They never mention kicking you out," Tyler reported. "They tell everyone you abandoned us without warning." "And those people believe them?" I asked. "Fewer every day." Aunt Carol asked me directly what happened. I told her everything. The truth was spreading, eroding what little social support my parents had left. Their narrative was unraveling thread by thread. In early April, I received notice of a court summons. My parents had scraped together enough money to hire a lawyer and were suing me for familial abandonment and elder financial abuse. The irony was staggering. They're claiming, "You had a verbal contract to support them indefinitely," my own lawyer explained after I retained her, "and that you breached this contract by cutting them off without warning." "They kicked me out of the house on Christmas Eve," I replied calmly. "I have witnesses, police reports, and a restraining order documenting their behavior." "We'll need documentation of your financial contributions to the household," she said. "I have 5 years of bank statements showing every payment, every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every grocery store visit." My lawyer smiled. "This case won't get past the first hearing." She was right. When we appeared in court in late April, my meticulous records painted a clear picture. Bank statements showing my entire paycheck going to household expenses. Text messages from my parents demanding more money. Police reports documenting their escalating behavior after I left. The judge was visibly disturbed by the evidence. "Let me understand this correctly," she said to my parents. "Your adult daughter was paying all household expenses while living with you. You ejected her from the home without notice on Christmas Eve. And now you're suing her because she stopped paying your bills after you kicked her out?" My father's lawyer attempted to argue that my financial support constituted an implied contract. The judge cut him off. "What I see," she said sternly, "is a pattern of financial exploitation followed by retaliatory behavior when the financial support was withdrawn. Case dismissed." As we left the courtroom, I heard my mother wailing dramatically in the hallway. "We'll be homeless. Our own daughter has left us homeless. A reporter from the local paper approached me for comment. I simply stated, I paid all household expenses for 5 years. When they decided I was a burden and threw me out on Christmas Eve, they made their choice. Now they're living with the consequences. The story ran the next day. Parents sue daughter for stopping bill payments after they kicked her out, made for an irresistible headline. The online comments were overwhelmingly supportive of me. By the following week, my father had lost a potential job opportunity when the employer recognized his name from the news story. Extended. Family members began publicly distancing themselves from my parents. Their social isolation was now complete. Through it all, I maintained my focus on the future, mine and Tyler's. In just a few more weeks, he would turn 18, and we already had a plan in place. On Tyler's 18th birthday, I parked outside our childhood home and waited. At exactly 8 a.m., he walked out the front door with 2 suitcases and a backpack. He didn't look back. "Happy birthday," I said as he got into my car. "Ready to start your real life?" His smile was answer enough. I had prepared the second bedroom in my apartment for him, enrolled him in the local community college, added him to my insurance, all the things parents should do, but ours never had. That evening, we celebrated with my friends, my chosen family, at a restaurant downtown. Tyler looked around the table in wonder. "Everyone here is so normal," he whispered to me. I knew exactly what he meant. No one was screaming. No one was manipulating. No one was keeping score of debts or obligations. These were just good people who cared about each other. 2 days later, I received notice that foreclosure proceedings had begun on my parents' house. Without my income and with their now destroyed credit, they had no way to save it. According to Tyler, they had been reduced to begging distant family members for a place to stay. Aunt Carol offered them her guest room, he told me. But only if they go to financial counseling and Dad gets a job. I didn't respond. Their problems were no longer mine. In May, a full bouquet of flowers arrived at my office with a card. "We're sorry. Please come home. We need you. Love, Mom." And Dad. I threw the flowers in the dumpster behind my building and blocked the florist's number when they called to confirm delivery. In June, exactly 6 months after being thrown out on Christmas Eve, I hosted a housewarming party in my apartment. Tyler had decorated his room with posters and photos, none featuring our parents. My friends brought thoughtful gifts and genuine warmth. My boss announced I was being considered for a management position. As everyone mingled in the living room, I stepped onto my small balcony for a moment alone. From 18 floors up, the Keya city lights spread before me like a field of stars. Somewhere out there, my parents were facing the consequences of their choices. The house was gone. Their credit was destroyed. Their reputation in tatters. Their son beyond their reach. They had called me a burden while treating me like an ATM. They had discarded me when I dared to assert a boundary. They had threatened me when their comfortable life dissolved. And now they had nothing. My phone buzzed with a text from a cousin. "Your parents are telling everyone they're homeless because of their ungrateful daughter. Thought you should know." I went inside, retrieved my laptop, and composed a brief email to my entire extended family. I attached 5 years of financial records, police reports, court documents, and a timeline of events beginning with December 24th. Parents throw me out with trash bags of belongings and change locks. Since there seems to be confusion about recent events, I wrote, "Here are the documented facts. I will not be discussing this further." I hit send, turned off my phone, and rejoined my party. Tyler caught my eye across the room and raised his glass slightly in silent acknowledgement. He understood, as few others could, exactly what today represented. 1 year ago, I had been a prisoner of obligation, draining my life to fill my parents' bottomless need. Today, I was free, and they were learning the most important lesson of all, that people are not resources to be exploited until they break. They thought they were throwing away a burden. Instead, they were cutting the only lifeline they had. And I discovered the most satisfying revenge isn't loud or violent. It's the simple, devastating power of walking away and taking everything you built with you. Summer turned to fall, and my life continued to improve. I received that management position, which came with an office and another substantial raise. Tyler thrived in his classes, making friends and maintaining a 4.0 GPA. We had created a peaceful sanctuary in our apartment, a place where raised voices and manipulation weren't tolerated. One crisp October day, almost a year after being thrown out, I received a letter forwarded through my lawyer. The handwriting on the envelope was my mother's. "Please read this," the letter began. "We've lost everything. The house is gone. We're living in your cousin Mark's basement. Your father can't find work because of what you've done to our reputation. We've been to counseling. We've changed. We're sorry for what happened at Christmas. We need another chance." It went on for 3 pages, alternating between apologies and subtle guilt trips. I read it once, then shredded it. Their words meant nothing to me. Actions had consequences. They were living with theirs. The holidays approached again. Tyler and I planned our own Christmas celebration, inviting friends who couldn't travel home or who, like us, had chosen family over blood relations. I took 2 weeks off work, my first real vacation in years. A week before Christmas, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Sarah?" It was my father's voice, subdued in a way I'd never heard before. "Please don't hang up." I said nothing, letting the silence stretch. "I know we don't deserve your forgiveness," he continued. "But your mother is sick. Cancer. It's advanced. She's asking for you." I closed my eyes, feeling for the emotional pull that should have been there. The daughter who would rush to her mother's bedside. The good girl who would forgive all sins in the face of mortality. I felt nothing. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said finally. "I recommend you contact a hospice care service. They can provide the support you need." "She's your mother," he said, his voice cracking. "How can you be so cold?" "You trained me well," I replied. "Goodbye, Harold." I hung up and blocked the number, then sat staring at my phone for a long time. I should have felt something. Guilt, grief, doubt. But all I felt was certainty that I had made the right decision. I told Tyler about the call that evening. "Do you think it's true? About Mom?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "And honestly, I don't care if it is. They used us as resources for years. Now they're trying to use her illness, real or imagined, as another resource. Some things never change." Tyler nodded. I was thinking the same thing. Christmas Eve arrived. Exactly 1 year since I'd been thrown out. Tyler and I spent the morning making cookies and preparing for our guests. The apartment smelled of pine from our small tree and cinnamon from the baking. Everything was peaceful. The doorbell rang around noon. I opened it to find a police officer standing there. "Are you Sarah Johnson?" he asked. "Yes," I replied, my heart racing. "Is something wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," he assured me, "but I have something for you." He handed me an envelope. "A woman named Carol asked me to deliver this. Personally, she said she's your aunt and that you might not accept it otherwise." I thanked him, closed the door, and opened the envelope. Inside was a check for a substantial amount and a note from Aunt Carol. "Your mother passed away yesterday," it read. "Despite everything, she left her life insurance to you and Tyler. Your father doesn't know. This money is yours, free and clear. Use it well. With love, Aunt Carol." I sat down heavily on the couch, the check in my hand. Tyler found me there and read the note over my shoulder. "How do you feel?" he asked quietly. I considered the question carefully. "I feel free," I said finally. Like the last thread connecting us to them has been cut. We decided to use the money to start college funds for both of us. Mine for a master's degree, Tyler's for his bachelor's. Our mother's final gift would fuel our future, not our past. Our Christmas gathering that evening was full of laughter and genuine warmth. As midnight approached, I stepped out onto the balcony again, looking at the city lights. "Merry Christmas," I whispered to the night sky. Not to the mother who had just died, or the father who was now truly alone, but to the woman I had become. Strong, independent, unbreakable. They had called me a burden, then discovered I was the foundation. They had discarded me, then found themselves cast adrift. They had demanded everything, then lost it all. And I had built something new from the ashes of what they destroyed. Something stronger, healthier, and entirely mine. 2 years passed. Tyler graduated with honors from community college and transferred to a state university on a partial scholarship. I completed my master's degree in business administration and was promoted to regional manager at the insurance company. We moved to a larger apartment with a view of the river, our lives expanding as our past receded further into the distance. I rarely thought about my father anymore. According to occasional updates from Aunt Carol, he had become something of a recluse after my mother's death, living on Social Security and whatever handouts he could cajole from increasingly distant relatives. The foreclosed house had been renovated by new owners who transformed it into something unrecognizable from our childhood home. At 27, I was finally living the life I'd always wanted, but never believed I could have. Financial security, professional respect, a peaceful home, true friendships. The systematic dismantling of my parents' lives had freed me to build my own. Tyler had blossomed too. No longer the quiet, nervous teenager walking on eggshells, he had become confident and outgoing, excelling in his computer science program and developing a wide circle of friends. The shadow of our upbringing grew fainter with each passing month. Then one ordinary Tuesday, I received an email from a name I didn't recognize. Mark Johnson, my father's cousin. The subject line read simply, "Harold in hospital, requesting contact." My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. I opened it. "Sarah, your father had a stroke last week. It was severe. He's stabilized but has significant speech and mobility impairments. Before this happened, he asked me to contact you if anything ever happened to him. He's been trying to get sober for the last year and has been attending AA meetings. The doctors say he'll need long-term care. He has no resources for this. I understand if you want nothing to do with him, but I promised I would reach out. Mark." I closed the email without responding and went about my day. That evening, I mentioned it to Tyler over dinner. "Are you going to see him?" he asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. Part of me says he made his choices and these are the consequences. Another part wonders if I should at least hear what he has to say. Tyler considered this. "I wouldn't judge you either way. But whatever you decide, I support you." After a sleepless night, I wrote back to Mark. "Thank you for the information." "Which hospital?" The following Saturday, I found myself walking down a sterile corridor toward room 418. I had come alone, dressed professionally as if attending a business meeting rather than visiting a sick parent. In many ways, that's exactly what this was. A transaction, not a reunion. The man in the bed barely resembled the father I remembered. Harold had aged decades in just a few years. Half his face drooped from the stroke. His once robust frame had withered. His eyes, though, were clear as they locked onto me when I entered. "Sarah," he said, the word slurred but recognizable. I stayed near the door. "Harold." His eyes filled with tears. "You came." "I'm here," I confirmed, "but I don't know why. Yet." He gestured weakly toward a chair, but I remained standing. "I'm sorry," he said, each syllable a struggle. "For everything." "That's not enough," I replied evenly. "You and Mom treated me like an ATM for years, then threw me out like garbage when I finally stood up for myself." "I know," he admitted. "Selfish, cruel, no excuse." "So why am I here? Do you need money for medical bills? Is that it?" He shook his head laboriously. "No money, just wanted to see you, before I die." "You're not dying," I pointed out. "You had a stroke." "Not yet," he agreed. "But someday." Didn't want to go without saying it. I was wrong, so wrong. I studied him dispassionately. The once frightening figure who had haunted my nightmares now seemed pathetically small. "Do you know what I discovered after you kicked me out?" I asked. "I discovered I was strong, that I could build a life without you, that I didn't need your approval or your love or your presence. That was the gift you gave me by throwing me away. Complete freedom." He nodded slowly, tears tracking down the frozen half of his face. You deserved better parents. Yes, I agreed. I did. We sat in silence for several minutes. I felt nothing looking at him, no anger, no satisfaction, no pity, nothing at all. What happens now? He finally asked. Nothing happens, I replied. You'll recover as much as you can. You'll live with whatever help the state provides. Tyler and I will continue our lives. We won't be visiting again. I understand, he said quietly. I stood to leave, then paused at the door. I forgive you, Harold, I said, surprising myself with the words. Not because you deserve it. You don't. I forgive you because carrying this anger serves no purpose anymore. You have no power over me. You never will again. His face crumpled. Thank you. I left without looking back, walking quickly through the hospital corridors and into the bright spring sunshine. As I drove home, I realized the forgiveness I had offered wasn't for him. It was for me. The final step in freeing myself completely from the past. When I told Tyler about the visit, he nodded thoughtfully. Do you feel different? I feel lighter, I admitted. Like I've put down a heavy weight I didn't know I was still carrying. Are you going to help him? Tyler asked. With money or anything? No, I said firmly. Forgiveness doesn't mean restoration. He made his choices. He can live with the consequences. 2 weeks later, I received another email from Mark. Harold had been moved to a state-funded nursing facility. He would likely spend the remainder of his life there. The email ended with a request. He asked if you would visit him again sometime. I didn't respond. Life continued its forward momentum. Tyler graduated and accepted a job with a tech company in California. I dated occasionally, though nothing serious developed. My career flourished, bringing increasing responsibility and rewards. The shadows of my past grew fainter with each passing month. Then 3 years after my hospital visit, I received a final email from Mark. Harold passed away yesterday. Funeral service this Friday, 2 p.m., Riverside Chapel. I stared at the screen for a long time, searching for any emotional response. Grief, relief, closure. But there was nothing but a gentle acknowledgement that a chapter had truly ended. Tyler flew in from California, and we decided to attend the service together. Not out of obligation or sentimentality, but as witnesses to the conclusion of a story we had survived. The funeral was sparsely attended. A few elderly relatives, some staff from the nursing home, Mark and his wife, and us, sitting in the back row, observing rather than participating. The minister spoke of redemption and forgiveness, of a man who had recognized his failures too late to repair them. It was a generic service for someone the speaker had clearly never known. Afterward, Mark approached us hesitantly. He left something for you both. It's not much, just some letters and photos, and he wanted me to tell you he was proud of you, both of you. Tyler and I exchanged glances. You can keep the items, I told Mark, but thank you for letting us know. As we walked to the car, Tyler asked, Do you feel anything? I considered the question carefully. I feel peace, I said finally. Not because he's gone, but because his existence became irrelevant to our lives a long time ago. We built something better without him. We did, Tyler agreed, looking around at the cemetery with its neat rows of headstones. It's strange to think that this is how it ends. Not with some dramatic confrontation, but just quietly, with nobody really caring anymore. That's the true consequence of how they treated us, I observed. Not the financial hardship or the public shame, but the complete emotional irrelevance. We moved on. They never could. We drove away from the cemetery without looking back, heading to dinner with friends who had become our chosen family over the years. People who valued us, supported us, treated us with respect and kindness. In the end, my revenge hadn't been about actively destroying my parents' lives. It had been about removing myself from the equation and letting them face the natural consequences of their actions. Without me to support them, to enable them, to serve as their emotional and financial crutch, they had collapsed under the weight of their own choices. And I had discovered that the most satisfying revenge isn't loud or violent. It's the simple, devastating power of walking away and taking everything you built with you. 5 years after my father's funeral, I found myself standing in front of our old family home. The new owners had completely transformed it. Fresh siding, landscaped yard, cheerful decorations on the porch. Nothing remained of the dark, chaotic house where I'd spent my early 20s funding a household that never appreciated me. I wasn't sure why I had come. Perhaps for closure. Perhaps to prove to myself how far I had traveled from that frightened young woman standing in the snow with trash bags at her feet. My life now was unrecognizable from those days. At 32, I had been promoted to national director at the insurance company, overseeing operations across multiple states. I owned a comfortable condo in the city and a small vacation cabin by the lake. My investment portfolio was healthy, my retirement accounts well-funded. I had built a life of security, peace, and genuine connections. Tyler had thrived too. At MOP 25, he was a rising star at his tech company, recently engaged to a wonderful woman he'd met in California. We spoke weekly, our bond as strong as ever despite the physical distance. The night my parents threw me out had seemed like an ending. In reality, it had been the beginning of everything good in my life. As I drove away from the old neighborhood, my phone rang through the car speakers. It was Aunt Carol, the only family member I still maintained contact with. "Sarah, I was hoping to catch you," she said when I answered. "I've been going through some old family papers, and I found something you should see." We arranged to meet at a cafe downtown. When I arrived, Carol was already seated with a manila folder on the table. "It's nice to see you," she said, embracing me warmly. "You look wonderful." "Life has been good," I replied, taking a seat. "What did you find?" She slid the folder toward me. "These were in your grandmother's old files. I was cleaning out the attic and found a box I'd never gone through after she passed." I opened the folder to find legal documents, a trust fund, established by my grandmother when I was born. According to the paperwork, it had matured on my 21st birthday, with a value of nearly $80,000. "I never knew about this," I said, confusion washing over me. "She never mentioned it." Carol's face darkened. "That's because your parents accessed it. Look at the next page." Turned to find a document with both my parents' signatures, authorizing the transfer of funds from my trust to their personal accounts. The date was just 3 months after my 21st birthday. Around the time my father had bought his new gaming system and my mother had redecorated their bedroom. "They stole my inheritance," I said flatly. "They did," Carol confirmed. "Your grandmother intended that money for your education or a home purchase. She set up similar funds for all her grandchildren. Everyone else received theirs." The revelation should have angered me, but instead I felt a strange sense of vindication. It confirmed what I had always known. To my parents, I had never been a daughter. I had been a resource to exploit. "There's more," Carol said gently, turning to another document. "Your grandmother left a separate bequest in her will. 5 acres of land up by the lake. It was meant to go to you when you turned 25. Your father convinced the executor that you had agreed to sign it over to him. He sold it a month later." I stared at the documents, mental calculations running. Between the trust fund and the land, they had stolen well over $150,000 from me. "Why are you showing me this now?" I asked. "Because of this," Carol said, pulling out a final document. "It's a letter your mother wrote before she died. She asked me to give it to you when the time was right. I think that time is now." I took the sealed envelope, my name written in my mother's familiar handwriting across the front. For a moment, I considered tearing it up unread, but curiosity won out. "Dear Sarah," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone. There are things you should know. The trust from your grandmother, the land, it was all taken by your father. I went along with it because we needed the money, or so I thought. In truth, we squandered it. Your father on his toys, me on things I didn't need. I told myself we deserved it for raising you, but that was a lie. We stole from you, plain and simple. What's worse is that we kept taking, year after year, even, as you worked yourself to exhaustion paying our bills. When your father threw you out that Christmas, I didn't stop him. I was afraid if you stayed, you'd discover what we'd done. I was a coward. I've regretted it every day since. This confession won't make anything right, but at least you'll know the truth. I'm sorry. Mom. I folded the letter carefully and returned it to the envelope. Are you okay? Carol asked. Yes, I said, surprised to find it was true. This changes nothing, really, just confirms what I already knew. Later that evening, I called Tyler and told him about the trust fund and the land, about our mothers. Confession. Are you going to try to recover any of it? He asked. No, I replied. That money is long gone. And honestly, it was worth it. Worth it? How? Think about it, I explained. That theft was probably what drove them to kick me out when I started questioning things. And being kicked out was the best thing that ever happened to me. If they hadn't done that, I might still be trapped in that house, funding their lifestyle, believing I owed it to them. You paid a heavy price for your freedom, Tyler observed. And it was worth every penny, I assured him. Look at our lives now, compared to what they were. Look at what we've built. They took an inheritance from me, but in return, I got my entire life back. A week later, I received a call from a lawyer representing the estate of my grandmother. Carol had sent the documents we'd discovered to the executor of the will, who had been horrified by the fraud. While most of the money was irrecoverable, the sale of the land had some irregularities. The purchaser had suspected something wasn't right and had placed a portion of the funds in escrow. To my surprise, I received a check for $42,000 partial restitution for the stolen property. The cosmic irony wasn't lost on me. After all these years, a small measure of justice had found its way back to me. I used the money to establish a scholarship fund at the local community college, specifically for students who had overcome family trauma or abuse. I named it after my grandmother, whose generosity had been perverted by her son, but would now continue in a form he couldn't touch. The following Christmas, 5 years after my father's passing and 10 years after being thrown out in the snow, I hosted a gathering at my lake cabin. Tyler and his fiancée flew in from California. Friends from work and my community filled the space with laughter and genuine warmth. As midnight approached, I stepped onto the deck overlooking the frozen lake, breathtaking under a canopy of stars. Tyler joined me, handing me a mug of hot chocolate. 10 years, he said quietly. Sometimes it feels like another lifetime. It was, I replied. We're different people now. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if they hadn't kicked you out that night? I considered the question. I think I would have stayed, kept paying the bills, kept believing I owed it to them, kept sacrificing my life for theirs. Their cruelty turned out to be my salvation. And ultimately their downfall, Tyler added. They were always going to fall, I observed. People who use others as resources eventually run out of people to use. I just accelerated the inevitable. We stood in comfortable silence, watching our breath form clouds in the cold air. I've been thinking about Mom's letter, Tyler said finally, about her regret. Do you think she really changed at the end? Perhaps, I allowed. But regret isn't the same as redemption. She recognized her mistakes too late to fix them. That's not a tragedy, it's a consequence. Tyler nodded. I've made peace with it all. Have you? Yes, I said, realizing it was completely true. There's no anger left, no bitterness, just gratitude for the life I have now. Inside the cabin, our guests laughed and talked, the sounds of genuine connection floating through the night air. This was the family we had chosen, the life we had built from nothing. My parents had taken everything from me, including an inheritance I never knew existed. But in throwing me away, they had given me the opportunity to discover my own strength, to build a life on my terms, free from their toxic influence. They thought they were discarding a burden. Instead, they were unleashing a force they couldn't comprehend. Not a vengeful fury, but something far more powerful. A woman who discovered that her value wasn't determined by their assessment. A woman who found that walking away was the most devastating response to those who had used her. They had called me the worst investment they ever made. In return, I had systematically dismantled everything they thought they owned, including the daughter they assumed would always return to rescue them. In the end, they lost everything: their home, their reputation, their relationship with their children, their dignity. Not because I actively destroyed them, but because I simply walked away and let them face the natural consequences of their actions. And I had gained everything: security, independence, peace, true connections, a life built on solid foundations rather than obligation and fear. As I looked out over the frozen lake, stars reflected on its surface like diamonds. I felt nothing but gratitude for that snowy Christmas Eve when my father spoke the words that set me free. "You were always the worst investment we ever made." He had been wrong about that, as he had been wrong about so many things. I was the best investment they ever made. I just ended up paying dividends to myself instead of them.